This is Whitney, and you're listening to the J-Cast on Jabberlog.
Welcome to Within the Trenches. True stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with Jabberlog on the J-Cast, and this is going to be a special episode number 19 of Within the Trenches. And this is going to be the first episode of a series of episodes going on this week, this Monday, today, May 20th through the 23rd. And I am currently sitting within the lobby of the Lexington Hotel in Lansing, Michigan. And I'm here for the NENA Conference 2013. This is the National Emergency Number Association. And I have to say, everything has been going pretty good so far. The weather has been nuts. I left earlier this morning around 6 or 6:30, and it was crazy muggy already. I couldn't believe it. I was all dressed up and everything else, and I was sticking to my clothes. It was nuts. It blew. But I'm here, and everything is going good. And the people who are sitting me with right now are trying not to laugh at what I'm saying. But this is going to be an excellent episode. For this first episode, I'm sitting with Dee Ann, the Assistant Director of Tuscola County, and she's also an EMP. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. I have been actually suffering from this, the whole climate change and everything. My allergies are killing me.
Amen. I'm there with you. I have bad allergies.
Good. So you know what I'm talking about.
Very well. Or not well, but yes, I can totally commiserate.
Yes. Last episode when I was with Whitney, we were talking about it as well, the whole change and everything. And I think she was having a problem with her ears as well. They were plugging up and she couldn't hear anything. And so I'm trying to talk and she's got, half of her headphone off and trying to hear me and talk at the same time. And I'm trying not to completely destroy the microphone while coughing into it because I had this scratchiness and everything and it was just messed up. But I'm a little bit better now.
Good,
and
good.
Yeah, and we're here in the hotel, so I'm not, dealing with anything outside.
It's pretty nice in here, but it's climate controlled.
That is true, and that is very true. So what I wanted to do with this episode, we had been talking a little bit, on email and Facebook and everything, and this show is all about the dispatchers, everybody at 911 emergency services, for people to learn more about us and be more in tune with what we do and really understand us because I'm sure you agree that the public doesn't know exactly what we do.
They don't have a clue.
There you go. Yeah, and I've always said it. I've been saying it since the beginning of this whole project, this podcast, that, I want people to know why I'm putting them on hold. They could be calling for someone, a loved one having a heart attack, and I have to put them on hold, but they don't know why. So hopefully the public listening to this, they will be able to understand better.
Right. Because it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I firmly believe, even though I'm an administrator now, I started part-time and then worked my way up.
Mm-hmm.
The frontline staff is of the utmost importance, in my opinion, because they're the ones that they take the calls every day. And
right.
They're the ones that provide the service.
Mm-hmm.
So, giving attention to the frontline staff is a passion of mine.
Exactly. We are the first responders.
Correct.
And, like I said, a lot of people don't know what we go through. We take all these crazy calls. And of course, we have our funny calls and everything, but along with that, we've got the craziness that goes on.
Ones too.
Of course. Yeah. Those always happen. So, how exactly did you get into dispatching? What drew you to it?
Well, strange as it sounds, I actually worked for a state farm agent. And
really,
I had, I want to say, around a quarter to half of the deputies from the sheriff's department insured in my office.
Wow.
And one of the sergeants said, I think you'd be a great dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
So he talked the sheriff into hiring me part-time. So I originally started by volunteering 6 weeks of my own time. And I had 2 other jobs. I had a full-time job, a part-time job, and 3 small children at home.
Whoa.
So I volunteered 6 weeks of my time, and then they hired me part-time. So then I had 3 jobs and 3 children.
Yeah.
And I worked part-time for a year, and then they hired me full-time. So
Wow.
I worked full-time for 4 years, and then I was promoted to supervisor when we went independent from the sheriff's department.
Wow.
And so
That sounds crazy because I just recently graduated with my master's, and going to work full time, going to school full time, and then having the wife and kids, and that was enough. But you having the 3 jobs there as well as 3 kids, that's amazing.
The one thing that I always just try. I mean, it sounds crazy. I think it kind of felt crazy, but when your kids are young, you do whatever you have to do to put food on the table.
Exactly.
And as much as I enjoyed working in the insurance office, it wasn't very challenging to me, and I didn't make enough money. And my husband had 2 jobs. He was also he worked maintenance at the medical care facility, and then he was in the Army Reserves.
Oh, okay.
So it just never seemed like we had enough money between all the jobs that we worked to put enough food on the table and clothes on their back, all that good stuff.
So then, what drew you in? Was it that challenge that you were just talking about? That you were looking for the challenge? So what was it that exactly that really drew you in?
I didn't really understand it in the beginning. So the 6 weeks that I volunteered my time were actually, I volunteered my time during the time that I would normally have slept.
Oh.
So I went without sleep on the days
that
I volunteered.
When did you sleep?
And then once I sat in there, and it was always nights. So I would work for the insurance agent during the 9 to 5 hours, or the 8 to 4:30, or what, I can't even remember what it was. And then I would go to McDonald's for my 3 or 4 hours. And then when I got out of McDonald's at night, then I would go down to the sheriff's department and sit in dispatch, and I would listen to these calls, and I think, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And that's how I started. I was hooked right from the get-go.
Nice. So then volunteering your time there, what did you think when you first walked into that room and saw, do you remember the setup exactly how it was?
Oh, yeah. We were in the basement, and we had a little tiny room.
Oh, no.
And, of course, radios didn't look anything like they do now. They were these big, huge things.
I'm sure.
And on the top of the radios, we had these big, huge maps of our county. And then our recorder was a big old reel-to-reel in the back corner. So our room would have been like a normal-sized room. But then once you got 2 radios and the recording system and all this other, the file cabinets that we kept the warrants in. And, next thing you know, it's just this little teeny tiny space. You don't have, we didn't have a CAD at that time.
Okay.
So we still punched cards.
Oh, you punched cards, really?
Yeah.
How exactly did that work?
When the phone rang, you would grab a card.
Okay.
And there were different colors for different things. They were manila for police. They were red for fire, and they were blue for the ambulance.
Whoa.
So as soon as you answered the phone, you would be grabbing before you even knew what it was. And of course, we always grabbed for the manila for the police officers first, because they were the majority of our calls.
Right, okay.
And if it was different, then you would immediately grab one of the others and timestamp it first before you do anything. Then we'd ask the same information we ask now, except for that you had to write it on the card.
Oh, wow.
And then as soon as you were done with the call, you would hand it to your partner, and as soon as they called an officer to dispatch it, they had to stamp it again, because that meant dispatch.
Wow.
Which, in the old days, we used all those 10 codes, right? Which are different for every agency.
Right, exactly.
They're not really universal.
Yeah.
So, and then as soon as the officer said he was clear en route, you stamped it again. And then as soon as he called on scene, or whatever the 10 code was, you stamped it again. If he was en route to another location for follow-up, you stamped it again. If he was on scene, you stamped it again.
Jeez.
And then when they were clear, you stamped it one more time. And then you had to go over to a typewriter and type in the log.
My jaw just dropped. For anybody listening to this right now, you could not see that, but my jaw just dropped. We multitask a lot as it is, but your explanation right there, and thinking it in my head, I don't know if I could get the rhythm.
Well, in those
at least
days,
not right away.
In those days, too, because our radios weren't computerized, you had to memorize the officer's voice.
Oh,
because they all use the same cars. So, like my county number is 79. So the car numbers started with 79. So there was like 7941, 7942, 7981, those types of numbers. You had to memorize their voices, because, as fast as it happens, you don't have something that tells you that unique ID number.
Right.
So that you can identify that with whoever takes that every day, like we do now.
Right.
You just had to know their voice when they called. Because,
man.
if it was a pursuit or something, those go fast.
Exactly.
And so you have to be able to, that's why our listening skills are so acute, because you have to be able to catch that in a split second.
Right. So then, how many people were in the dispatch office with you? Was it just you, or?
Well, back when I started, we had 2 people for some hours, but I worked alone on midnights for a portion of my shift.
Okay.
I didn't work my entire shift alone, but I did work a portion of my shift alone.
So were they 8 hours, 12 hours? How did it work?
When I started, we were on 8s, but shortly after I started, we went to 10s. But we have worked 12s. I really like the 10s. Just because you can still have time with your family.
Right.
The 12s are tough because you basically eat, sleep, and work.
Yep.
There's not much time for time with your family, be it your children or your siblings or, whatever family you have. And there's not much social time on a 12-hour shift, whereas on a 10, you get up in the morning, depending on your shift, you get up in your morning. And,
yeah, exactly.
You do one of 2 things. You either do things around the house before you go to work, or you get up and get ready to go to work, come home, and then do your things, whatever they are, your grocery shopping, your household chores, whatever.
Yeah, I always had the problem where I don't know what it is. I work midnights, so I work 4:30 to 4:30. So when I get home, it's about 5 in the morning. Now,
yeah, but you're still going to bed when it's still dark.
Yes,
that's the important part. When I worked midnights, I worked 12 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Oh, so it's already morning.
You're dog tired at 8 o'clock in the morning, but at 10 in the morning, guess what? You've caught your second wind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's sometimes when I get home in the morning and I am dead tired on the way home. I have to blare the radio so I can stay awake. And there have been a couple times where I've caught myself about to nod off. I'm like, no. And I start jumping up and down on the seat so I can stay awake.
I totally understand.
So then I get home and all that jumping up and down and everything, I'm fully awake.
Right.
So I'm the only fool outside at 5 in the morning grilling steak and eggs.
Right. Well, you have to do something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then, and then finally I'll go to sleep, but then my body I'll wake up. Even if I go to sleep right away, when I get home, I'll wake up at about 9:30. It never fails. And I try to go to sleep.
So you're like a 5-hour kind of person.
Pretty much. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I try my hardest. Even if nobody is home, I will wake up at 9:30, right on the money. And I don't know what it is.
I had a more complicated scenario back when I was on midnights because my youngest of 3, my daughter, is autistic. And when I was on midnights, she didn't get any services. So I also spent much of my time not sleeping so that I could try to fight for services for her and diagnoses, because in the beginning we didn't have anything. It just, I actually took her to somebody who said I was just a bad parent.
Oh, geez.
So I spent a lot of time taking her to psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists. I mean, you name it. We traveled all over the state of Michigan, and I worked midnights.
Oh, man. I can't imagine. So I don't know if I said it or mentioned it earlier, or if you said it, but how many years have you been in emergency services, dispatching and everything?
This is my 20th year.
20th year.
All in one PSAP.
Nice.
All in one dispatch center. It's actually technically called a PSAP, which is a public safety answering point, because not all PSAPs are 911 centers.
Oh, okay.
Many PSAPs are still located within a law enforcement agency or an ambulance agency or a fire agency.
Nice. And that's good for the public listening to this, so they know more about that.
A PSAP means that you answer 911 calls.
So do you remember your first 911 call? I
do not remember my first 911 call, but I remember the 911 call that has stuck with me the longest, and it's actually 20 years old.
Oh, really?
It will be. Actually, it'll be 20 years old in December. And my toughest call.
Okay. Are you able to share anything with it? I mean, you don't have to give names or anything like that.
Well,
but
and I wouldn't give names.
Right,
but,
yeah.
What happened was that early in the morning at the end of my shift, the first week. It's a 4-week process, and it defined whether I would stay or leave.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it stuck with me for so long.
Oh.
The very first week, early in the morning before I went home, I had a little old gentleman who called me home alone having a heart attack. Died on the phone with me.
Oh.
He was the only one home while the ambulance was still en route. And my county's rules, so most ambulances aren't going to be at a location within 3 to 5 minutes, just depending on where they're located.
Right.
So that was my first week. The second week, I just before I go home, I take a call from a little old man who's home alone, has a heart attack, and dies on the phone with me. My third week, I take a call just before I go home from a little old man who has a heart attack and dies on the phone with me.
Oh, geez.
The fourth week, by the way, the fourth week is 3 weeks before Christmas. The fourth week, I take a call from a young woman who is a babysitter, an in-home babysitter. And a baby's in full arrest. And it was Mom's first week back to work after she had this baby. And that baby died.
Wow.
And that was traumatic to me, and I still carry that.
I can see why.
And mental health for our dispatchers is exceptionally important to me because it doesn't matter how big or how little the call is. It matters in how it affects you.
Right, exactly. And you and I were talking earlier about, PTSD and how, there's a lot of reports coming out now that, 911 dispatchers that we deal with this as well. And, for the public to listen to this, you might see all of these calls, these bad calls that, they blame 911 for, but you don't know what was going on before that. You don't know exactly how the call went. These things are spliced in a certain way, to
sensationalize it.
Right, exactly.
That's their job.
Right, and for you to share these calls, which I thank you very much, because other dispatchers can learn from the same thing as well as the public and know, this is what these guys actually go through. These are the kinds of calls that they take.
I personally believe that our dispatchers are frontline soldiers.
There you go.
Now, my husband is a soldier, is retired now. He served a year in Iraq and has PTSD.
Okay.
So I live with it every day. And I know that just because we can't see it doesn't mean we can't experience it.
Right.
And I knew that early on, but we didn't have the facilities and the understanding and the resources that we have now.
Right.
Thank goodness we have them now.
Exactly.
And that's why it's really important to me that we have these resources and that we're utilizing them, and that we're at NENA on the national level, at the National Emergency Number Association, we have a work group on 911 stress.
Okay.
And I co-chair that with Jim Marshall from the 911 Training Institute and the 911 Wellness Foundation. And I'm also a board member on the 911 Wellness Foundation because it is really important to us that we focus more in the future on the mental well-being of our frontline staff.
Oh, that is definitely good. And I'm hoping that tomorrow, I'm going to shoot him an email, see if we can get him on as well, and we can have, the both of you back on and maybe a couple other people, to talk more about that because that is a big issue. But going back to you and how you started out, you're the assistant director now at Tuscola County.
Yes.
So how long did it take you to move up? I mean, how did that whole thing go? I mean, why did you really want to get into admin, I guess?
Well, I had been in administrative positions and other lines of work.
Okay.
And I just think that I have a leadership type personality. I'm bossy. I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? I'm kind of bossy. So, and I have 3 kids and I tell them what to do all the time. So I think it was just kind of a natural progression for me. When we went independent and hired our first independent director, the first thing she did was test for a supervisor and promoted 2 of us out of, I believe there was 4 of us that tested.
Okay.
So I was very, very blessed to be promoted into something that I was very interested in. And I'm not sure that I'm using the appropriate word there. I had a a boss when I worked at McDonald's, actually. Who
Okay.
I was still friends with her after I got hired in,
Mhm.
and I said, I think I'm going to test, but I don't think I'm interested in the position. And she said, well, why is that? And I said, I just want to know how well I do. And she said, don't you want things to change? Because I had complained about things
Right.
when we were part of the sheriff's department. I said, well, of course I want them to change. And her quote to me was, if you want there to be change, you must be willing to be part of that change.
Very
And
nice.
and that was when I decided that if it was offered to me, that I would take the promotion because I wanted to affect change.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly why I wanted to move up as well and be a supervisor. When I went in there, I had my interview, which I don't know, it was like an hour long. And even though,
And board, did you have a board interview? Was it like 4 or 5 people? We had 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, it was just my director and assistant director. However, there was a dispatch center that I applied for before Allegan, and it was a 6 or 7 panel board.
Mm-hmm.
They were all at a table like we're sitting at right now, and then just me on the other side. And that interview was about 3.5 hours long.
We still do that at my center.
Oh
when we hire
no,
people.
that is grueling. But I mean,
It is kind of scary because that's how I hired in as well.
see, but
That's
it's
how
a good
I hired
thing
in,
though.
and that's how I promoted.
Yeah, now that I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, I started in Florida actually, and I've been doing this for about 13 years total now. But when I think back at it, as scary as it was, it makes sense because we take calls, all the time, and you've got to be on your A game. So if you can't take being at a table with 6 people hitting you with questions, then
Exactly.
how
We
are you
want
going to
you to
take
be
these
able
calls?
to think on your feet,
Right,
Because
right.
that's what you have to do
Exactly.
when you're dispatching. I
Mhm.
mean, because let's just say you're taking a medical, and it sounds like it's this,
Mhm.
but then it turns into this,
Right.
and then you're working that, and it turns into something completely different from that.
Anything can
I mean,
happen.
not every call is that complicated,
Mhm.
but they can be.
Yes.
So that's part of the board interview is we're looking to see if you can think on your feet quickly.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely makes sense. Now, in the introduction, I said that you were also an EMP. Now, for those public other dispatchers, anybody who doesn't know, what exactly is an EMP?
An EMP is an emergency number professional,
Mhm.
and it is a certification through the National Emergency Number Association.
Mm-hmm.
It is a baseline knowledge
Okay.
of everything that is 911,
Mhm.
not just call taking and dispatching, but the behind the scenes, how telephones work.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, because 911 is still based on a landline signal,
Right.
many people don't understand that even your cell phones have to be converted to a landline signal to go across those landlines to 911.
See, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? there are 3 phases. There's phase
Yes,
0,
yeah.
phase 0,
Yep.
phase 1, and phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those signals are still converted to a landline signal in order to come into the dispatch center.
Wow. So there you go. Anybody who didn't know that, like me,
So
you just got schooled.
that's part of the knowledge that you study
Uh-huh.
and learn in order to hold that certification.
Wow. So it really digs in deep with.
It digs in very deep.
And for those who don't know it, you were saying that this certification. Now, earlier I was in your class that you were teaching here at this conference, and you were talking about 1,000 questions in this exam to get the certification,
A
or
pool.
oh, it's
of
a
1,000.
pool. Oh, okay. See, this whole time when you guys were talking about it, I don't know if you could see me. I mean, I was up in front, and my jaw was completely dropped. I mean, I looked over to my coworker Jill, and I said, "There's 1,000 questions that you have to take."
A pool of 1,000.
Oh,
And
okay.
you get asked 150 questions.
Okay.
out
I
of
feel
a pool.
way better now.
That's part of why in the class we tell you that the test you take
Yes.
will not be the same as the next person to you.
Well, now it makes even more sense that we're one-on-one, because when you guys were talking about it earlier, I about passed out.
Well, it is a daunting test.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It's a
Yeah, you
daunting
guys were
test.
saying it's pretty hard.
It's a hard test, but it's not so daunting that anybody couldn't take it. Because
Mhm.
if you study, you can take it. I am not the smartest person on the face of the earth. I'm not even the smartest person in the room. But if I can take it,
Mhm.
you can take it.
Nice.
If I can pass it, you can pass it.
So how long do you get to take this test? Or actually, how about we back up a little bit? When you're going to take the test, what would you say for anybody who's thinking about it is a better time span for studying? It's like 6 months, because you had said 6 months.
If you're interested in becoming an EMP, do your research.
Right.
Go to the National Emergency Number Association, and their website is www.nena.org, nena.org.
Right.
And go under programs, EMP certification, and look it up. Look up everything there is on it. It gives you it gives you the scheduling, the testing scheduling, test scheduling, not testing, test scheduling. It tells you what you have to have in order to be eligible to take the test. It tells you how much there is. They have a body of knowledge, or it's called a BOK. That's also on the website. You can print that off, or and this stuff does get updated. So they have a reference manual that you can buy, and I can't stress enough how important it is to buy that reference manual and not to obtain somebody's old copy, because it does get updated.
It changes.
It does change. It is what we do is a living body of knowledge,
right?
And it's ever changing. Next Gen 911's coming.
Oh man!
So you do not want to get an old reference manual. You want to get the most current one there is. So buy the reference manual, download the body of knowledge, and then do your research. Look at it.
And you have to be
I don't mean study
a member
it yet.
too, right?
No, you can still be EMP certified without being a member.
Really?
It does cost you more.
Oh, that's right. I remember seeing the price for members and non-members. Okay.
Correct.
I gotcha.
Correct. But I mean, how do you not get benefits out of being a NENA member? You be a part of the chapter. You can join work groups on the national level as well as the chapter level. There's so many benefits to being a NENA member that, I mean, if you're looking at the EMP, you need to just become a member and make sure you reference my name when it says
who brought you here.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, I might as well get some credit, right?
There you go.
I don't really think it gives any credit, but I think they just go, "Hey, great job, Dee Ann."
They got the tally marks and everything.
Yeah. Good job, Dee Ann.
Yeah, way to bring them in.
Right. So, I mean, but when you do look it up and look it all over, and then you decide on a timeline. I personally recommend 6 months to a year. It'll give you enough time, especially like many of us, we start, those 911 trunks have already been there for a gazillion years, right?
Right.
We didn't understand how it worked, just like you didn't understand that wireless was converted to a landline signal.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do some studying in order to be familiar with the way that 911 trunks work and how the signal comes in. Same thing for radios. You need to understand the inner workings of them.
Right.
How does it transmit? So you're going to need to give yourself enough time to be able to learn that. Our state also has an EMP study group.
Okay.
It is chaired by Don from Berry County.
Yes, Berry County.
Isn't that funny? So he is our EMP study group chair. And so you can contact Don, and his information is on the Michigan NENA website, which is www.michigannena, spelled out MICHIGANNENA.org.
Nice.
And Don's information is on there. And you can contact Don. He'll add you to the study group. We typically have an EMP study session before every NENA meeting.
Okay. So for those listening earlier, how she had just said, isn't that funny about Berry County? Well, we were having this discussion right before the podcast. I was telling them about Berry County from Dublin, Ireland on episode 4 and how, I had got introduced with him. And if you guys don't know the story, it was just, he had sent me this message on LinkedIn and it said Berry County. And he had asked me, how would you like the Irish perspective on 911? And this whole time, I thought it was the agency. I thought it was somebody playing a joke. And so we had kept going back and forth and do some research, and actually talking to him, I find out, oh, you fool, his real name is Berry County, actually spelled out like the county.
Berry County.
Yeah. So there's a reference, for anybody listening who's wondering, why was that funny?
Yeah. That was kind of an inside joke for a moment there.
Yeah. But it's all good. But just to wrap up this episode really quick, for anybody who is thinking about going into for the certification of EMP, what advice would you have for any dispatchers thinking about going into it, or anybody in emergency services that are trying to get the certification?
Well, I think the best advice is what I've already told you, is make
Just
sure
the
you do your research. Look it over. And if it's something that you're thinking about, but you don't know that you're ready to do it right now, you don't have to do it right now. You don't have to do it in a year. If you think, okay, right now I am overloaded. I'm taking college classes. I have small children. You know, my baby's 4. He's going to be in school next year. I just don't know if I can handle doing it now. That's something you can do later. I mean, you don't have to, you can still be interested. You can still start your research and start learning things and be part of the study group and start studying. You can do that. You don't have to take the test just because I say 6 months to a year is the best time. Doesn't mean you have to do it in that time frame.
Right.
You choose what works best for you. I mean, I wanted to take the test like 4 years before I took it. I was interested in it.
Right, yeah.
But I knew I just couldn't do it at that time. So, but I didn't start studying. That was my mistake. I learned a lot by taking the EMP.
All right. Well, there you go. And thank you very much for joining me for episode 19 of Within the Trenches. And like I said before, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get you and Jim on tomorrow so we can talk more about the PTSD. But as always, if any of you ever have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that, you can email the show, the jcast@jabberlog.com or WTTpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter @Jabberlog. And all of this will be posted 24/7 on thejabberlog.com. And one last thing, don't forget that we have got a new Facebook fan page. So it is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. So make sure to go on there and like it to be up to date on everything going on with the show. And like I said earlier, this is just one episode of a series of episodes that's going to go on this week at the NENA conference. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You just listened to Within the Trenches on the JCast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to thejcast@thejabberlog.com.